After 3 years, the final season of Stranger Things is here. Netizens call it an unsurpassable masterpiece of the decade. What surprises will this season bring? This is not only the ultimate answer to many supernatural mysteries, but also a heartfelt farewell to the memories of our youth. After a series of bizarre incidents in Hawkins, the military has forcefully taken over, completely sealing off the town. The entrance to the Upside Down is especially heavily guarded, with no one allowed near it. The 4 cracks that appeared on the streets have also been sealed shut with thick iron plates. However, as time passed, the residents of the town gradually adapted to their isolated lives. Only Robin would occasionally complain a bit on the radio broadcast. Perhaps they had broken some taboo again, because this time the radio suffered a serious malfunction. Steve had no choice but to ask Dustin for help, but to his surprise, Dustin responded rather harshly, telling him to check the manual and figure it out himself. He then swaggered into the school wearing a Hellfire Club t-shirt. The casualties from the last disaster were so severe that the townspeople directed all their anger at the Hellfire Club. Eddie risked his life to save everyone, but ended up being falsely accused of being an evil cultist. Dustin was still upset and couldn't help but make snarky comments to everyone he saw. But today, he ran into a member of the basketball team who was even more arrogant than he was. Fortunately, his friend showed up just in time and managed to drive away the basketball team captain who was about to make a move, but instead of being grateful, Dustin resented his friends for not standing with him to clear Eddie's name. However, the others were much more mature than Dustin and reminded him not to forget Chief Hopper's advice. Right now, everyone needed to keep a low profile and stay hidden, always ready for the next move. After all, their opponent was none other than Vecna, the Dark Lord of the Upside Down. At the same time, 11 had become a top target for the military. With her parents by her side, she moved to the suburbs, hiding her whereabouts while training hard. As 11 grew older, her physical and supernatural powers improved so much that every military attempt to capture her failed. Meanwhile, Steve and the others at the radio station pored over manuals and determined the radio malfunction was due to a problem with the remote signal transmitter. The group quickly reached the communications tower. Steve and Mike, eager to impress the girls, climbed up with determination. Like balls in heat, they raced to the top and fixed the transmitter that had been pulled out. But when they looked down, the girls had already disappeared. Their dedicated mover Murray had arrived. This time, he not only brought weapons and ammunition, but also brought an important piece of news. The military would be launching an expedition into the Upside Down tonight. Everyone's eyes lit up. This was definitely a great opportunity to find the big bad Vecna. You have to know, the entrance to the Upside Down had always been controlled by the military, and it was usually hard for them to even get close. After figuring out the military's specific plan, Robin used the radio to send a message to everyone using the pre-arranged code words. Almost at the same time, 11 and her adoptive parents, along with Dustin, Will and the others, all began to formulate their own action plans. The military would enter the Upside Down at 10 p.m., so they had to arrive at the restricted area before 9 and get everything ready. Will and his group were responsible for keeping watch, monitoring the military's movements, and sending signals to Hopper to ensure he could use the smoke illusion convoy. Meanwhile, Robin's group was tasked with maintaining contact with Hopper in the Upside Down. This task seemed easy on the surface, but it actually carried enormous risks. Even keeping the signals synchronized between the two worlds was not something just anyone could do. Fortunately, this group had already entered and exited the Upside Down multiple times, so they were well aware of all the precautions. Just as they finished discussing all the details, Will's face suddenly turned pale. He looked up at the sky, and the world began to spin. That familiar dread returned, suddenly reminding him of what he'd experienced years ago. Back then, Will was just a young boy. When he woke up in the dilapidated little cabin, he suddenly saw a twisted figure wandering outside. Without hesitation, Will caused the trigger, but the ordinary bullets couldn't harm the monster at all. Instead, they only made it angrier. It only went headfirst into the dark woods. Ahead was a dead tree full of branches, and the boy climbed it without a second thought. But when he looked down, the monster was already at the base of the tree. Terrified, Will lost his footing and fell to the ground. In the end, he couldn't escape the monster's clutches. Dazed and confused, he was dragged into Vecna's lair. Tentacles writhed on the slippery ground, binding Will tightly in place. Vecna's whispers struck deep into his very soul. "You and I. We are going to do such beautiful things together." Will snapped out of the memory. In response to his friend's concerned questions, he didn't dare voice his worries, instead claiming he was just on edge. But what Will didn't know was that his sister, Holly, was also caught in a dizzying spin. Although it just looked like ordinary fun, when the other children went home after school, the teacher saw Holly in the corner talking to thin air, so she immediately called her parents. Holly sat alone in the hallway until her brother Mike came over. She rushed to explain that she wasn't talking to thin air. A nice person was warning her that a terrifying monster was about to appear in town. That person promised to protect her, but Mike thought his sister was delusional. In a crisis, rather than wait for some unknown help, it's better to find a way to strengthen your own resolve. Meanwhile, in a military-controlled compound, a female doctor was studying the strange creatures from the Upside Down, but unfortunately, after all this time, her research hadn't made any progress at all. The doctor believed the key to everything was 11. They had to get her back as soon as possible. And tonight's exploration of the Upside Down was just a last-ditch alternative. Over here, Chief Hopper had packed everything and was ready to go. 11 followed behind him, pestering him, saying she wanted to explore the Upside Down with him. Hopper refused without a moment's hesitation. If 11 was caught by Vecna, then all would be lost. What's more, the military was also conducting a massive search for 11. Hopper stressed again that his trip into the Upside Down was just to gather intel. He had no intention of looking for trouble with Vecna. There was no need for 11 to risk her life with him. The scene shifts to the town school. The basketball team captain was scared out of his wits by a pet snake in a locker. Seeing the Hellfire message on the door, he instantly knew whose handiwork this was. When Dustin arrived at Eddie's grave, he found the headstone had been vandalized again. He took out a cleaning agent to wipe it, only to find the stain wasn't paint, but sticky blood. Under the leaves nearby lay the corpse of the pet snake. This was clearly retaliation from the basketball team. By the time Dustin came to his senses, he found himself surrounded by several basketball players. His few dangerous experiences had given him a bit more courage, but his own strength couldn't keep up. Dustin was beaten to a pulp. Because of this, he missed tonight's mission. The gang was still wondering why Dustin was absent when they saw 11's family walking toward them from a distance. Mike excitedly ran forward. The young couple hadn't seen each other for several months since they last parted. The two sat on the rooftop, telling each other how much they'd missed one another. Mike couldn't help but dream about the future. If they could just get rid of Vecna once and for all, he wanted to go with 11 to a place where no one knew them. There is no crisis there, nor any conflict. Two people can live together happily and peacefully. Unknowingly, night falls, and the operation of the Demon Squad officially begins. Because Lucas was absent for no reason, Will had to take over his job and observe the movements of the military convoy with binoculars. Meanwhile, Hopper quietly sneaked into the abandoned house at the base entrance through a secret passage he had prepared in advance. At this moment, everyone has arrived at their designated positions. As it nears 10 o'clock at night, the military convoy slowly arrives at the entrance to the Upside Down, and the observation team reminds everyone to get ready. Two soldiers holding flamethrowers begin to burn the filament-like obstacles at the entrance. Amidst the crackling sounds, thick smoke spreads through the air, and visibility drops rapidly to the naked eye. Hopper quickly dashed into the smoke, and while the guards were distracted, he leapt into the nearest military vehicle. Soon after, a large hole was burned through the thick barrier, and Hopper successfully infiltrated the Upside Down along with the mighty convoy. Everyone breathed a collective sigh of relief, having completed the most difficult part of the plan. Now, it was up to them to see how well they could perform. Steve kept the van moving in sync with the convoy in the Upside Down. This was the key to staying in contact with Hopper. But the next moment, a loud crash came through the walkie-talkie, making everyone's hearts sink. Had something happened to Hopper? The hairs on the back of Will's neck instantly stood up. A chill swept overhead, and his vision began to flicker. He could vaguely see soldiers being attacked. It turned out that Will had actually established a connection with the Demon King of the Upside Down. The military vehicle Hopper was in tried to retreat, but the monster leapt several times and landed on the boat, killing the driver through the thick armored plating. The military vehicle completely lost control and crashed into a large tree, while the van receiving the signal was also damaged due to energy overload. Gritting his teeth, Hopper crawled out of the vehicle. Fortunately, his injuries weren't serious, but he was now completely cut off from the real world. With no other choice, Hopper could only force himself into the woods, determined to complete the mission alone. At this moment, Will was also overwhelmed and collapsed to the ground, but fragmented images continued to flash before his eyes. He saw the monster weaving through the woods, and in the end, it actually charged toward Robin's house in the Upside Down. A critical moment. Will was slapped awake, but he looked at Robin with a terrified expression. Meanwhile, in the real world at Robin's house, her younger sister Holly was staring at the constantly flickering light when suddenly a strange crack appeared in the ceiling. The monster actually crawled through from the Upside Down. That concludes all the content of the first episode of Stranger Things Season 5. This episode spent quite a bit of time continuing the storyline from the previous episode, so the content felt a bit chaotic. Also, after several years, the appearances of these young actors have changed quite a bit, so at first glance there is indeed a bit of a sense of disconnect. However, the reviews for the later episodes have soared, and the plot is said to be absolutely explosive. If you enjoyed this, please stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next episode.